Hello, you're welcome to Newsfile. This is your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. Once in a lifetime event in Parliament, when the majority walks out, the 2021 budget gets rejected by the majority, quote unquote. What is the state of the Ajinkwa budget? Does it indeed have what it takes to save itself first? Upon the developments in Parliament last night, will it get back onto the House, or it will take some other legal compulsion? We also will be paying particular attention, and this was supposed to be a special edition, looking at the $1 billion debt-burdened silent crisis energy sector. If you didn't know, that sector has been in a silent crisis, and it is estimated that it will be making a whopping 12.5 billion debt in 2023, and that has the potential to cripple their economy. How do we avoid this? We're right back to deal with the vex matters.
Hello, my name is Evans Mensah, and you can relive all the fun and excitement on Top Story, Newsnight, and of course, Ghana Connect via podcast. All you need to do is to log on to my Joy Online/podcast. Search for your favorite show and relive the moment. Joy 99.7 FM, your radio for discerning listeners.
Joy 99.7.
You're welcome. I'm Samson Ladia Yanini. I'm your host, and thanks, as always, for joining us. And here is my take. I'm still on the road safety campaign, and it doesn't look surprising, but should this continue to happen, that we continue to see the increase in carnage on our roads, particularly as we head into the festive season in December. My take, I simply ask you, wear your seatbelt. Wear that seat belt. It saves life and limb. So the law is quite straightforward, and it makes it mandatory that once you step into a vehicle, as a driver or as a passenger, you are required to wear your seat belt. This is for your own protection. So why don't we use it? Well, if you fail to wear the seat belt, you are liable to be taken to court and maybe fined 120 Ghana cedis or 600 Ghana cedis. That is between 120 to 600 Ghana cedis fine. Or in addition to that, go to jail for 3 months. This should not happen. It's for your own protection. So just wear the seat belt. It saves life and limb. Thank you very much. And as always, this show is brought to you by the kindest sponsorship of Bank of Africa, as strong as a group and close as a partner. MTN everywhere you go. Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. We lead properties. Home is where one starts. Having mosquito spray and coil, pleasant on humans, tough nightmare on insects, and Napa Foods. It's tasty. DBS Industries, we truly are your Ruth experts. Robert & Sons Limited, optical services, your comprehensive eye care services provider. Rehoboth Properties, quality housing for all. Fabrimental, your partner in steel. Trasaco Fast Floors, stronger, faster, and affordable. And Cap Farm, Legends Nights. Of course, my outfit is by Habel's Crouter, and they are found at Adjringano Gate, East Legon. You can call them 0200 84 1988. 0200 84 1988. We will be right back, but in Parliament, to gauge what happened, the legal effect of what happened, and going forward, what is likely to happen. Has the budget been rejected for good? Well, in America, the economy gets shut down a number of times because of some of these issues. But this hardly happens on this side of the continent or the world. We'll be right back.
Hello, my name is Nathaniel Atto. You can catch up with all the fun and inspiration on the Joy Sports link here on Joy 99.7 FM, together with all other shows over and over again. It's very simple. All you need to do is go to myjoyonline.com/podcast and relive all of those fun moments over and over again. Joy 99.7 FM, your radio for discerning listeners.
Joy 99.7.
Walk out of this chamber. Let people go. Say we get right. Say we get right. Today. I said we get up. I said we get up. I see. Everybody, I know you. Leave. Want to break the body. See. I said we will leave. You should make the must leave. You will not condone this something. What do you think you are? Nothing of what I say. Honorable members, the request honorable members on the majority side, everybody should walk out. Let's walk out. Walk out. Walk out. Everybody, walk out. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go.
The results. Those in favor of the request, that's the prayer of the Minister of Finance for more time to do consultation with the leadership, 0. That's nil. Those against the requests of the Minister for Finance for more time for consultation with the leadership, 137. So the noes have it, and the request is accordingly lost. Now I proceed to put the question on the motion. The question is, those in favor of the approval of motion numbered 11 on the order paper, who says, and I read, that this Honorable House approves the budget statement and economic policy of the government for the year ending 31st December 2022. Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against the motion say no. Honorable members, clearly the noes have it. The motion is accordingly lost. Honorable members,
be that as it may, he went ahead, did what he did in absence because we were not in the chamber. And then went ahead to state that the motion on the budget, as moved by the Minister of Finance on Wednesday, the 17th of November, is lost. That whole procedure was unconstitutional. As far as we are concerned, it's null and void. There's no binding effect on anybody. Now, we say so because, and so the motion on the budget, as far as we are concerned, has not been pronounced on by Parliament. It's still standing in the name of the Minister for Finance. And in the fullness of time, a properly constituted House, not one presided over by the Right Honourable Speaker, will make the decision. Now, out of mischief, the Speaker quoted Article 102 of the Constitution that, and I quote, a quorum of Parliament, apart from the person presiding, shall be 1/3 of all members of Parliament. He was right. And the quorum is for the transaction of normal business. Maybe statements are being made, no decision is being taken. So that one, that quoted number of 1/3 can listen to it. When it comes to decision making, it is not Article 102 that applies. It's Article 104 that comes into play. You recollect that yesterday the minority leader signaled that they are going to invoke Article 104. It was not for nothing. We thought the Speaker knows the fundamentals of the Constitution.
He's ignorant.
Now, what happened today involved a decision of the House. In that case, it is not Article 102. It is Article 104. plus 1. And I read, except as otherwise provided in this Constitution, matters in Parliament, including this one, shall be determined by the votes of the majority of members present and voting, with at least half of all members of Parliament present. The number that the Speaker quoted reflected the entirety of the membership of the minority caucus in Parliament. But assuming that is right, because you have cause to believe that at least 2 of them were not in the chamber. And yet, out of mischief, they said that 137 were in the chamber. He knows that at least 2 of them were not in the chamber. Why did he do that? In any event, even if we go with the 137 number, it's still less than 1/2 of the 275 member chamber. So, when he puts the question to 137, ab initio, the Speaker ought to have known that that number would not support the decision of the House. So that purported decision is a nullity. It doesn't have any effect on anybody. And to that extent, the motion moved by the Minister of Finance has not been lost. It still stands. Colleagues, for the avoidance of doubt, to give greater certainty to the constitutional provision, let me quote Article 1, Order 1091 of the Standing Orders. That provides no question, absolutely no question, for decision in the House shall be proposed for determination unless there are present in the House not less than 1/2 of all the members of the House. And except otherwise provided in the Constitution, the question proposed shall be determined by the majority of votes of members present and voting. Assuming without admitting that he had 137 members in the chamber, there was still less than 1/2 of the 275. And by necessary implication, that exercise that he engaged in or supervised is a complete nullity. It's a complete nullity. And I believe that whoever presided should bow down his head in shame. In the fullness of time, the proper thing will be done.
What happened is a nullity. In the fullness of time, the proper thing will be done. Who determines nullity in the circumstances? And when will time be described as the fullness of time? And what will be the proper thing to be done? Now, let's get to, as it were, unpack the developments in Parliament for you. We are going to be speaking to the majority leader, who you just heard a while ago, Osei Che-Mensah Bonsu, MP for Suame, and also the MP for Ejumako, SCM Enyan, Kesel, Ato Forcing. But before I come to them, let's quickly try and bring you, some picture of what was happening when we all missed. Because at the time, we were glued to our TV sets following the science and maths quiz. Parker was in Parliament. He's our parliamentary correspondent, and he saw everything that unfolded. Thank you for joining us, Parker.
Yeah, something.
Great. So let's begin from this point. The House was due to sit at 10 a.m. yesterday, correct?
That's correct. The advertised time for the start of business yesterday was at 10 a.m. Okay. However, both the minority and the majority were not in the chamber as at 10 a.m., I must admit. The minority proceeded to the chamber around 11 o'clock. That was when they had concluded a conversation on their caucus meeting. The majority at the time were still locked up in their meeting, as we've been told, also taking a decision and mapping our strategy on how to eventually get the budget approved by Parliament. So around 12:10, there about midday news, the minority held a press conference, and this was led by Sam George, a member of Parliament for Ningo Prampa, raising concerns over the delay of the majority caucus in the chamber. And something at the time, the allegation was that because they didn't have the numbers, they were employing some delay tactics to ensure that they get all their members to the presence of Parliament and subsequently in the chamber so that they will have the numbers to vote in favor of the budget. Quickly, Frank Anadompre, who was in the meeting, the caucus meeting of the majority, descended to address the media and debunk the allegation. The point he made was that the Speaker, Alban Barbin, was having a meeting with the leadership of the House, i.e., the minority leader and the majority leader, of course, together with the leadership. And that is the reason members of the NPP caucus are not present in the chamber.
Okay.
But the question was asked as to, if the leadership is having a meeting, where are your members? The members were not having the meeting with the Speaker. So where are they?
So eventually, when did the Speaker come to his seat?
The Speaker came around 1:15 thereabouts. This is after the minority had protested and called on him to start activities for the day. So when the Speaker appeared and commenced the business for the day, Ahmed Ibrahim, the Deputy Minority Whip, raised the concern because at the time there was no member of the NPP in the chamber when the Speaker arrived in the chamber.
That's about 2 p.m.
No, that was around 1:15 thereabout.
1:15
thereabout.
Okay.
Yes. So Ahmed raised the concern that this clearly it's not the best. The NPP caucus have to be in the chamber so that they conclude the debates. The Speaker then said that, well, let me suspend the House for 30 minutes. Let me get the NPP MPs in the chamber, then we can resume sitting. So that was done. The 30 minutes, but of course, we exceeded that.
But that was what the minority was unhappy about.
Yes, they were unhappy about it.
And their, as it were, grudge was that you need a quorum to start proceedings. And there was a quorum. A quorum is 1/3. Translated into actual numbers, 92 members. Correct?
Sure, that's correct. 92 members.
Okay.
And so the point advanced, or the argument advanced by the Speaker was that, well, we are concluding the debates. We need Haruna minority leader to speak. We need the majority leader, Seche Mensah, to also speak.
Okay.
So it will be only fair if we get the full complement of the House in the chamber so that we can begin proceedings.
Okay, so 30 minutes adjournment. Yes, 30 minutes adjournment. When did they come back?
So they came back after 2 hours, and that was around 3:15, 3:30 thereabouts. So when they returned, that was when the majority leader indicated to the House that the Finance Minister, Keno Furata, is in the chamber, and to quote him, he has a prayer for the House, or he's praying for some attention so that the Speaker can grant him the request to engage the leadership of the House, so the minority leadership and the majority leadership, on the budgets. It became a bit of a back and forth with the majority leader and the Speaker. The Speaker's point was that we are concluding the debate on the budget. Let's finish. When we are done, we'll listen to the Finance Minister.
At this point, Parker, the House had been called to order, so the House was in session.
The House was in session at this point.
Okay.
We had the members of the majority in the chamber, members of the minority also in the chamber, together with their leadership. Okay. So they're all present in the chamber. Right. So when James Sabonsu made the call, the Speaker shut it down and gave the opportunity to Haruna Idris, the minority leader, to begin his debate or conclude the debate. Haruna did that, raised all the concerns that have been raised, by the minority. Then Chief also came in to also advance the argument in favor of the budget, which of course talked about how this budget will solve all the problems in the country. So after that, the finance minister was given the opportunity to now make his request known to the House. And in clear terms, he stated that what he has observed, he has monitored the commentary since the budget presentation. Clearly, the House is divided, the majority on one side and the minority on the other side. He's asking the Speaker to grant him permission to further engage the leadership of the House. The Speaker then said that, well, you've asked me, let me put the question to the House, members of the House, as to whether indeed they will grant those requests or not. Again, the majority leader raised objection, indicating that you are the Speaker of the House, and that you have every right to act independently. You are clothed with the powers of the authority to immediately grant or disapprove the request being made by the finance minister. So you don't need to ask us, as in members of the House, as to whether we need to accept it or not. In fact, that's where the whole chaos and the misunderstanding began. So the Speaker insisted that he's going to put the question via voice vote.
From your understanding, Ken Ofori-Atta's prayer meant that the House ought to have been adjourned and that the business was not likely to continue last night?
That's correct. In fact, that's the explanation given to us by minority. And that's why they shut it down.
Okay.
If you want to engage the leadership further, what it means is that you can't take an hour or two to engage the leadership. They were going to take the weekend to engage the leadership, go through the budget, peruse it thoroughly, and then the concerns raised by the minority would be looked at as to how they can tweak the portions they are raising the concerns, and then come back on Tuesday to continue with the business.
Tell us how the finance minister had to be moved out of the House, or the Speaker was compelled to call on the marshal, as in, if you like, the police of the parliament, to seek to march him out of the House. What happened?
Something. The voice vote was put. I mean, the question was put for a voice vote. Then all those in favor say aye, all those against say no. The Speaker ruled that the noes have it, meaning the request from the finance minister has been shut down. Deputy Majority Leader Fayomaki then challenged the Speaker's ruling and called for a division. Now, Samson, and our viewers know that Parliament has standing orders, and so if you call for any order in the standing order, it has to go with a particular procedure. So then the minority chief whip, Munta Kamubrag, then said that...
Hold on a second. The speaker then called for a division.
A division? No, it was Afeyomakin who called for a division.
Which the Speaker granted.
The Speaker's earlier ruling.
And the Speaker granted that.
And the Speaker granted that.
Right. Calling for a division means that the voice vote is not clear, correct? And therefore,
that is correct.
We need to be able to count the numbers. Is that it?
Not necessarily, but take another voice vote, but ensure that all non-MPs within the chamber or the lobby have been asked to leave the plenary, so that when we put the question, we can clearly hear the voice votes, the noes and the ayes. So that was where the minority chief whip, Munta Kamubarak, raised the concern that, well, if you've called for a division, then Ken Ofori-Atta is not an elected member of parliament. He is not supposed to be in the chamber, and so he should be escorted out. So the Speaker granted that and asked the marshal to ensure that Ken Ofori-Atta and any other member who is not an MP gets out of the plenary. So the majority started protesting. Then Davis Opoku-Ansah, being the member of parliament for Mpasi constituency, spotted the general secretary of the NDC, Johnson Asodi Nketia, in the public gallery. Then he started agitating that if you want Ken Ofori-Atta to leave the chamber, subsequently you have to order the removal of Johnson Asodi Nketia from the public gallery. And something, that was the video you showed when Davis Opoku-Ansah, together with Farouk Alu Mahama, Michael Ochebefi, and others were agitating and pointing to Johnson Asodi Nketia, who was seated at the public gallery, to get out of the public gallery. If he refuses to do so, they are not going to proceed with activities of the House. And so this actually generated a whole chaos, controversy. The NPP MPs began banging the tables. They started shouting and screaming, others accusing the Speaker of bias. And so eventually, in fact, this went on for almost about 15 minutes. All of a sudden, all we could see was the majority leader, the deputy majority leader, pack their bags and their documents, exiting the chamber. So when we saw them exiting, all the other MPs started following. And then Dr. Pokuansa started asking the other NPP MPs to also get out. So you could see in the video.
So the majority walked out, leaving the minority alone.
Leaving the minority alone. In fact, throughout the whole process,
and after that, after they walked out, then the Speaker put two questions, which we have followed. The first question was about what?
So before the question, the Speaker suspended the House for 5 minutes. That also took about 20 minutes. And the suspension was to get the NPP MPs and its leadership back into the chamber.
Yeah.
But that didn't work out. So when they returned, the Speaker, first of all, before Parliament begins proceeding, you would have to check if they form a quorum. So the Speaker, first of all, decided to check if indeed the numbers in the House could form a quorum. So when they did the head count, they realized that there were 137 NDC MPs in the chamber. Well, I must say that has been challenged by the majority leader. He claimed that at the time only...
All right, so that's fine. Let's move on. So 137 was counted official. Then the Speaker proceeded, move quickly to the two questions he put. Then we...
To the two questions. So the first question was whether the House should grant the Finance Minister's request to engage the leadership further. Obviously, the MPP side was empty, so there was no answer to that effect. When he asked the minority, of course, there was a big no. So he ruled in favor of the minority.
Right.
That, well, the Finance Minister's question has been shut down. Then he proceeded again to put the question about the motion, because that was
approval of the budget.
Approval of the budget. That was a substantive issue for the day. So again, he put the question via voice. Since we had an empty NPP seat, of course, the minority had their day, and the Speaker ruled in favor of the minority.
And declared that the budget had been rejected.
The budget had been rejected by Parliament.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Kwesi Parker Wilson is JoyNews' parliamentary correspondent. Let me now get to the MPs and speak to them. Honorable Osei Mensah Bonsu, thank you very much for making the time to join us this morning.
For having me, Samson.
Great. May I confirm if Atuforsen is with us? Dr. Atuforsen? All right. Thank you very much. Okay. So why do you say, with the emphasis that you say, that what happened is a nullity?
Well, Samson, you listen to your own correspondent. And sometimes from their own narrative, you will see whether they also color their reportage with their own personal biases. I'm not going into that. I will speak to the facts of the matter. You recollect when he began, you yourself related to some media interaction by Sam George. I think Sam George himself was completely misinformed or uninformed about what was happening. Yesterday, the leadership had sought a meeting way back with the Speaker, and we're struggling to find space as to when exactly that meeting could come off. The Speaker eventually determined that we could meet yesterday in the morning, have a breakfast meeting. At the same time, the Speaker had granted leave for leadership and him to meet with Dr. J.Y. Amoako, former Executive Director of UN ECA, the Economic Commission for Africa. And he wanted to have some engagement with the Speaker and leadership. That was concurrent to the meeting that we have programmed with the Speaker. When the meeting began, we had indications from the Fix the Ghana group that were submitting a petition to
Fix the
Parliament.
Country.
fix the country, I should say. So the Speaker sent the Honorable Minority Leader and myself to go and meet with the group and receive their petition. We went to the ceremonial gate to receive the petition, which petition eventually did not even come to us because there was confusion among themselves about who to present the petition to us. So we're waiting for them in the sun for about 45 minutes. They couldn't sort themselves out as to who to present the petition to us. Eventually, they themselves, some quarrel ensued, and the petition that they were to submit to us, somebody seized it and did tear it up into shreds. So no petition was presented to us.
They contest this claim, but it will be dealt with at a different time.
So that's their own business.
All right.
But suffice it to say that no petition came to us. Haruna and I then decided to leave and for them to sort themselves out, and when they did, then they should come to us. So we had left the scene. About 45 minutes, fruitless endeavor from us. It was when we left that the reportage came to us that had happened after we had left. Now, be that as it may, these three things were going on at the same time. And we had programmed a meeting of the caucus at 9, when we thought that by about 9 o'clock our meeting with the Speaker would have been over. But because of the concurrence of these three events, the leadership meeting with the Speaker, leadership meeting with the Speaker and leadership meeting with Dr. Amoakun, and third, the meeting with the Fix the Country group, our own caucus had to be in abeyance. So when we finished with all these meetings, I requested that the Speaker, because of what has happened, our own caucus had not taken place, and we needed about 30 minutes to have some brief caucusing before coming to the plenary. This request was made in the presence of all my colleagues, in particular the Honorable Haruna Dusa, the Minority Leader, because he was closest to me when I was making the application to the Speaker, and the Speaker granted it. So we went into caucus, and at the time, I'd heard that the Finance Minister wanted to see me. So I said, let me finish the caucus, and then I'll go to see him. But just when we're about ending, he was ushered into the caucus meeting. And then he came with this request that he wanted to see the Speaker and talk to him to grant him space, to have further engagement with the two caucuses. So I said he should allow me to finish with my own caucus meeting, which we did. And then we gave signal to the Speaker that the Finance Minister had come in with this request. The Speaker then said, and I thought we could meet the Speaker in his holding room. But the Speaker said, no, we should go to the administration block and have this meeting. So we went to the administration block to have the meeting, and he invited the leadership of the minority as well. So all of us, the leaders of the majority, the leaders of the minority, met the Speaker together with the Finance Minister, who put in this request. Then the suggestion came from Muntaka, the chief whip for the minority, that he knows the disposition of his group. So he thinks that it would be unwise for the Finance Minister to meet the entire caucus of the minority. So he proposed that he should meet leadership. And alongside, I gave an indication that just so that the leadership would not be accused of perhaps entering into any alliance with the Finance Minister, let it be the expanded leadership of the minority. So that lately there's been accusations, against the minority leadership. And sometimes when I was a minority leader, these things would be made against you, even without any basis. So I said that for transparency purposes, that meeting should involve the expanded leadership of the minority. And we'll do same with my side, so nobody accuses anybody of anything. So that was what happened. And the unfortunate thing, however, was that when the Speaker moved into the chamber and Ahmed Ibrahim made observation that the majority side was empty, the Speaker then said, well, nobody has come with any request for any caucus. His understanding was that the caucuses were to hold in the morning. So he doesn't know, by inference, he doesn't know what was happening to the majority side. Even though we had told him we were going to have this caucus, and I had specifically mentioned that we require about 30 minutes to deal with whatever encomes the chamber. There's a reason why the Speaker, in suspending the House, mentioned that he was suspending for 30 minutes, because I had made a suggestion to him. But the tragedy of the circumstances was how he did not own up to my own prayer to him, but to go and say that, no request had been made to him. I was surprised by the Speaker's utterance. But let's leave that and come when we went eventually to begin proceeding.
Great.
When we entered, and the Finance Minister, because we had this discussion behind the curtain in the Speaker's own conference room. And so the onus fell on me to make the request on behalf of the Finance Minister for him to engage, and then we'll come to deal with the substance of the matter before us. The Speaker then surprisingly said, initially he said, no, we should listen to the minority leader, who then encapsulates the position of the minority. And then thereafter we will listen to the Finance Minister, and then I will come in later. And I thought that chronology was not good enough. Because if the minority leader, sticks to the position, which position could be influenced by the engagement that we have with the Finance Minister, then the better arrangement would be for us to allow space to the Finance Minister for him to have this engagement. And I heard your reporter saying that Ken Oforiatta was seeking to have the entire weekend, to have the consultation. I don't know where he's getting this information from. It's totally untrue, and that reportage is inaccurate.
So that is why he said that's what he was told. So it could be a source.
Told by who? He is a reporter of your cherished media house. So he thrives on rumor mill.
No, that's not rumor. When you are reporting and you are dealing with a situation like unfolded yesterday, I was watching you guys throughout, and you are dealing with such a situation. Of course, you would be told things.
You would seek verification, even if you heard that from one side. You would seek verification or authentication from the other side as well.
Yeah, so he doesn't say emphatically that is the official position. That's not what he said.
Be that as it may.
Right.
Let me just say that no such thing cropped up. Indeed, during our consultation, he wanted some time. And I thought that maybe if he had a maximum 1 hour with the minority, maximum 1 hour with the majority, we could arrive at some position. Because when we met, some of the issues that were raised, and I had even raised them ahead of time with the Finance Minister. Some of them, the minister realized that we needed to do some amendment and patching up work in the presentation.
For example, what issues, for example?
For example, the Accra Energy Agreement that the minority related to. I brought to the attention of the Finance Minister that how it had been captured in the budget was inaccurate. And that they could have looked at the request from the Minister of Energy when he came to Parliament. And it finds expression in the request and also in the Hansard. The proper thing ought to have been done. The second thing involved an issue that had been raised by the Honorable Jito Ablakwa in respect of the Lekuso Sea Defense War. And when the Minister for Housing, Works and Housing came to relate to it, he said he had put in a request. Apparently, it went under the radar. And the minister was prepared to accommodate that. The Speaker himself, on the day of the presentation of the budget, remember, we took a while after we went into conclave. The Speaker raised issues about allocation through Parliament.
That's right.
And we're going to deal with that. So there are, on these counts, some major concessions that the minister was going to come up with. And then dialogue.
There's nothing about the e-levy?
The e-levy, when we went into post-budget deliberations on the budget. We had many consultants who came to talk to that. One of them, I would admit, called for the total scrapping of the e-levy and for government to look elsewhere. 4 others related to, one of them also said he thought that was a very ingenious thing to do, so he thought that we should do it. That we need to further engage before it's in possession. One person said starting off at 1.75 was on the high side, and that government could climb down, and he proposed that we could start with 1%. Another said the weight was burdensome, and that we should go to 1.50 and rather bring back the road tolls to top up. So all these discussions had gone. How was the minister going to respond in engaging the caucuses? And we thought if space had been granted, these things could have been sorted out.
As far as you know, the minister or the ministry or government has made concessions on these, particularly the e-levy, and you were just going to announce it to the members to get them, to buy in.
The e-levy, I wouldn't know what the minister was going to say about it. But these other ones, I know, because we have had these discussions, and the minister was going to engage the minority, engage the majority about possibilities.
Okay.
And then, of course, when you have done that, it may have to reflect on the ceilings or environment in the budget and so on. So perhaps he had done his homework and wanted to speak to us on these matters.
Please indulge me this last one. Didn't this issue about the president's travel expense, didn't it come up because they had indicated that if you did not bring it to the front burner and it was not answered to, it would be an issue they would consider going into dealing with the budget?
Well, at that stage, we are dealing with the policies and principles of the budget. So what has that got to do with the policies and principles? In any event, I know somebody has also filed a question relating to the expenditure involved in the speaker's own travels, when he also used the presidential jet to Nigeria and so on. Why hasn't that question also featured prominently in this? I think that those are side issues that we can deal with, because at this stage, it is the principles and policies underpinning the budget that we're dealing with.
All right. As I thought that the issue relating to the speaker's travel was, at this stage, irrelevant. Okay.
I also thought that matter.
Respectfully, do me this small favor. Hold on. I return to you on the legality, and I hope we can deal with the legality briefly as to whether or not what happened was legal or illegal or constitutional or unconstitutional. Dr. Atufo Singh, thank you. So, as the majority leader says, a whole lot of things, were going on at the same time, and there was a need for this engagement, and clearly there were signs of concession for the things that you were seeking. So why did things have to go the way they did?
Thank you very much, Thompson. Things that actually happened yesterday, my opinion, are things obviously should have happened earlier on before yesterday. In fact, those kind of engagement should have happened probably on the Thursday before this Friday. So we would have had a good day, a smooth sail through of the budget policy. Concessions should have been made on Thursday evening before Friday. Unfortunately, it did not happen. I agree with the minority leader when he said that of recent there had been times that the minority leadership has been accused. And obviously at the time that he was minority leader, used to accuse him. So there was some element of mistrust. And one particular thing did not help the matter. When the Honorable Muntaka had come back from the engagement with the Speaker and communicated to the minority side that apparently Finance Minister wants to meet the caucus to have an engagement, the leadership of the caucus and the leaders. The bench in particular said no. For the simple reason that there has been a reportage, in fact from journalists, that the Finance Minister has said that he knows how to go about in a way to engage the minority to get them to change their position. So they felt that, look, this man is going to go about and get them to change their position. So we've made our position clear. If he has something to tell us, let him come, say it to all of us as a house, so that everybody in this country will hear about. So that our constituents will also not have a feeling that obviously probably or for some reason we've been compromised, and that is why we are taking that decision. So if he has any position, at least we are doing this for the people of Ghana, let him say to the people of Ghana, let us all here accept it or fail to accept it. So that was the position. And so the matter was committed to the Honorable Muntaka. Yes, he has to also relay that to the leader. And the leader said, if that is what the members are saying, he is not ready to go. So for that reason, the Finance Minister should be given the opportunity to say what he has to say to all of us as a house. Yes, the matter was communicated. The Finance Minister, when he had his chance, made a prayer, and obviously what he said was that he still insists that the engagement must happen. But outside was, particularly coming from the bank bench, we're not ready at any point in time to engage the Finance Minister. And that is why I was thinking, if they wanted to have some engagement, you do this engagement prior to the approval of the budget of the day. You don't do it when you are about to approve the budget. So that was a problem. Major concern. But for me, if you ask me, what matters most is how we move forward as a country. That is what matters.
Right, but before you get to that, you want this Finance Minister to meet you halfway or give you some concessions.
Yes.
He wants the opportunity, and you are shooting down the opportunity when you are being called upon to vote on the question of giving him the chance to further engage. It doesn't matter that he's been a bit late about it. Why do you shoot it down?
The opportunity, he presented his budget. Okay, so he can provide opportunity. He had opportunity to wrap up. Our positions has been made on the floor. In fact, the minority leader had said that he object to A, B, C, D. In fact, 3 items. He mentioned 3 categorical items that he disagreed and something must be done about it. The minister has opportunity to wrap up his debate, the motion. It was up to the minister to expand those things from the records or make amendments to those things so that all of us as a country can witness what has been changed or what is going to continue or not going to continue in the budget. Creating impression that he's going to discuss something with the minority alone, I'm sure by now everybody else would have had the impression that the minority has been compromised. But obviously we've had our issues with our base and almost everyone saying that the minority are not doing what they are supposed to do. Now our question is simple. If you have something to do, please do it for all of us to see what you want to do. If you have concession, communicate to us.
So the three things you were demanding included that the e-levy should be scrapped completely.
You see, the minority made certain demands. The e-levy has 3 legs. One, our concern was that there was one on remittance. We believe that it is not the way to go. Taxing remittance will be inimical, obviously, to the economy of this country. It's not going to help the country to go forward. We also mentioned the issue of the banking, bank transfers. We think that is going to be detrimental to the growth of the banking sector, and so we should not accept it. Then comes to the MOMO. We said, yes, it is a regressive tax. And if you are going to impose a regressive tax, you have to impose it in such a way that its impact on the ordinary Ghanaian will not be that severe, particularly the poor and the less privileged. So we made some proposal. I heard the minority leader saying that the rate of 1.75%, even if you are going to start a regressive tax, is not the way to go. Have to reduce it. Yes, again, you've talked about 100 Ghana cedis and the fact that you are going to exempt 100 Ghana cedis every day for the next 30 days, making it 3,000 Ghana cedis. What is the guarantee that somebody is going to send 100 Ghana cedis every day? 3,000. So if you intend to do 3,000, why do
Can you make this one? Can you make this one? Can you make this one a little simple for myself and my viewers and listeners? What do you seek on the e-levy? Do you seek a complete scrapping or a certain reduction of it?
Okay, we are asking as a minority, as articulated by the minority leader, that the remittance component of the e-levy be abolished completely. That's one. Number two, we are asking that the bank transfer component of the e-levy be abolished completely. Number two. Number three, we are saying that the e-levy component imposed on mobile money is something that we do not believe must continue. But even if you decide to continue for any reason of raising revenue, and the fact that the country may need revenue so severely, and so we should do something about it, its impact must be mitigated in such a way that the poor will not suffer. And so, therefore, the 1.75% starting is not something that we should accept. We should go back to the table and rethink about it. That is one. And then two, on the same mobile money, yes, the government has said that they are going to exempt 100 Ghana cedis every day for the next 30 days. It is laudable, but our argument is simple. There is no evidence that ordinary person will send 100 Ghana cedis every day for the next 30 days. So if government intend to exempt 3,000 Ghana cedis, instead of making it 3,000 in the course, why don't you make it lump sum? So if I am the one selling mobile money out, and obviously I have an account with mobile money, so if I up to 3,000, add me after the 3,000, and don't wait for me to send every month, every day 100 Ghana cedis, because probably I may not be in a position to send 100 Ghana cedis every day. These are suggestions that we put across. Government, we are not saying government should accept all of them, but we were expecting government, particularly our Minister of Finance, to have come to the table to say that we have listened to you. We have this in mind. We can do A, we can do B, but probably we cannot do C because of A, B, C, D. Then we can have a conversation.
The impression we get in the public is that you took uncompromising positions. So the things you put forward, you are not ready to compromise on them.
That may be your impression, but that is not what actually happened.
Okay.
We made our position clear, and then we had actually said and had communicated.
Okay. Now, thank you. Now, hold it there for me briefly, and then, gentlemen, with the greatest of respect, we will want to do this very quickly. So, Honorable Chairman Sabonsu, you say that what happened does not comply with Articles 104, Article 104, and then the Standing Orders 109. Therefore, it is invalid. By that understanding, nothing has happened. You are going to go back to the budget. Is that the case?
That is the case, Samson. But let me offer just a small comment on what my colleague has said. The request from the Minister of Finance to consult or engage was not made to only the minority caucus. He said he was going to have time to be given, he prayed for time to engage the minority and the majority. It was only to the minority.
All right.
And second, to my colleague saying that it was a bit late in the day, I disagree with it. Atu had been the Deputy Finance Minister under President Mills and President Mahama. You will remember that when there was a period when the motion for the appropriation bill had been moved, an error was detected, and we raised it. And before its conclusion, we then had to, the Speaker had to suspend the consideration of the motion for the Minister to engage further. Dr. Akudose was a ranking member on finance. So he, together with me and some others, met, and the minority side, the majority side, at the time, the Honorable Aviji, now Deputy Minority Leader, was the chair of the Finance Committee. He, together with Ato and Sestekpe, we suspended consideration and met at the clerk's table office. Ato remembers this. And then we did serious consultation and engagement. And I think about 2-3 hours, we have finished everything before we came back to the house.
All right.
So what was wrong in the making of this request?
Okay.
Now, the matter begins with the Speaker subjecting the request of the minister, the simple request that the minister made. And we had this behind the curtain meeting with him. And the Speaker then comes to the chamber and he says, even this prayer that you are requesting, that you are making to me, that I should allow for this engagement, I will not pronounce on it. I'm submitting say for the consideration of the House. It's never happened in Parliament, in my life in Parliament. It has never happened.
Right.
A minister comes, he wants to make a statement, he presents it to the Speaker allows it, and he doesn't come to say that this minister has come.
Right, but by Article 104, you are saying that there needed to be at least 138 members before what happened could have been valid. Is that not so?
The Speaker clothed himself with Article 102, which provides, and he quoted it.
Yeah, but I need us to make progress because we have heard you on that already. I'm saying that what you're saying is that by Article 104.1, straightforward, there was a need for at least 138 members in the House, and that was not there, so it is invalid.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So what it did was not only an illegality, it was clearly unconstitutional. And because it's unconstitutional and illegality, it has no value. It has no value.
But Parliament was fully quorate at the time. So what will be the problem?
There is the quorum for Parliament, in respect of Article 102, is for the transaction of normal business. Like this prayer that the minister came with, he didn't require a decision. Maybe the Speaker grants it. If we have the correct number and the Speaker is presiding, he could grant that request. Or a statement is to be made by a member or a minister or whoever. And 137, no decision is required at that time. 137, the 92 people in the House could engage the person, could offer the platform for the discourse. Now, but when it comes to decision, on any matter, we should have the correct number. Is not the normal correct number of the 92, but it then the number then rises to at least 138.
Yes.
That is the plain language.
So my question to you is that when the Constitution says that the votes of the majority of members present and voting with at least half of the members of Parliament present, at the time, Parliament was almost full, despite your walking out. Does your walking out change the fact of the numbers that are registered as present in the House?
When the Speaker posed the question, when we walked out, the Speaker did not merely continue. He posed the question again. At that time, there was only 137. Now, assuming, without admitting, I guess you want to say that maybe for the first leg of the prayer that was rendered by the finance minister, at that time, there were 130. There were more than 138 people in the chamber. And so when we left, at the time he made a request, we had more than the correct number, that is involving more than one half, to have taken a decision. But there were preliminary issues that were raised, including the Speaker threatening to use force on the finance minister. Our orders provide for the lobbies to be cleared. The finance minister was not in the lobby. He was in the chamber with us. How does the Speaker order him out and threaten to use the marshal on him. It has never happened in this house, in Parliament.
And your insistence that Esiedun Ketia will also equally should be worked out. He was in the public gallery. Is that where the law says people should be cleared off?
The law says people should be cleared from the lobbies, not the arena of the chamber. That's the plenary.
Yes. But
if the speaker extended it to the plenary, then equally should have, that is, if he extended his powers to the plenary, he should have also have extended it to the public gallery.
Yes, before my final question to you, I'm asking this one, that you know, for example, when you form a quorum of 92, after the quorum is formed and people walk out, after the quorum has been formed, it does not negate the fact that the quorum has been formed. I mean, that's a basic company law, that if you need 100 people to form a quorum, once it is declared that we have 100 people and the meeting starts, the fact that some of the 100 have moved out when the meeting was ongoing does not mean that the quorum has been affected to negate what they need to do. Is that possible in this situation?
It's not possible.
Why not?
Something read the language of Article 104.
Right.
It says they must be present and voting. That correct number must be present in the chamber. They must be voting. So that extrapolation that you're making is out of range and is very tangential to the import of Article 104.
Okay, and I need you to have a certain understanding. I'm seeking to have you educate people. So as you see, I'm asking you things I know about. So if you are not careful and you make me the subject, it will not be helpful.
I believe that this one you don't know about it. With respect, the greatest respect to you. Order 109.
It's basic law.
Clear. Order 109 is clear.
Honorable,
this no question for decision.
Yeah, Honorable, this is basic law.
Be proposed for the determination unless they are present in the house, not less than one half.
This is basic law. This is basic law, and it has become part of the issues for the debate. So I need to raise it with you and to seek your interpretation of it. And I read the Constitution because it's also plain on its face. So again, I'll plead with you. I'll plead with you to look at the issues and take me out of it. Now, my final question to you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, my final question to you.
Stick to the language of the Constitution.
I get that. My final question to you is that in the present circumstance, you need to move forward. The budget, you need a budget. Yes. By Article 178, 179, the government cannot, actually simply operate without a budget. So how are you going to go about it, seeing that you also don't have the numbers to approve the budget?
Who says? Who says?
It's a question to you, sir.
We believe we have the numbers. And the Speaker has adjourned the House on Tuesday. And we'll go on Tuesday. We'll get to the bridge, we'll cross it. But we'll do what's legal and legitimate.
Supposing the Speaker doesn't show up on Tuesday.
The Speaker is scheduled to travel today. But he's given instructions that in his absence, the Deputy Speaker should preside. So the Deputy Speaker will preside.
Yes.
As I said, the proper thing will be done.
If the Deputy presides, what numbers will you have? If the minority decide to walk out, as you did, will you be able to approve the budget?
We'll cross the bridge when we get there.
Oh, can we cross it now? Because we know about this.
We will not anticipate what will be done on Tuesday. But whatever is done on Tuesday would conform to the Constitution and to our standing orders.
So you see the potential of what I'm raising. The potential is that you could go over this again, over and again, without making progress. And this country's economy will be hurting.
We are drinking the soup even before we finish pounding the fufu.
Okay.
Something. We are drinking the soup even before we start pounding the fufu. Don't be pessimistic. I believe that we all want the good for this country. And I believe We've not ceased our consultations. We'll continue the consultations, and what is right and appropriate will be done in the fullness of time.
Would you say, finally, just very finally, would you say, I'm looking at the future, would you say that we have made a mistake as a country in the manner in which we have dealt with Article 93, where implicit in Article 93 was a minimum of 140 MPs. Then we improved the number, and that number was even. Then we improved the number to 200, still an even number. Then we improved it to 230, still an even number. And then the latest situation, we improved the number to 275, odd number. Is that what is hurting us?
Samson, you know my position on this. The last time the number was increased to 275, I disagreed because I don't know of any established democracy anywhere in the world where at the conclusion of any census or 10 years thereafter, the number of seats in parliament have to be increased. I don't know of any such. And that is why I have insisted that perhaps we could have lived with the 140. It was increased to 200 just before the commencement of the Fourth Republican Parliament, the first Parliament of the Fourth Republic. And then thereafter got increased to 230, as you said, and to 275. I think we should bring this matter to a conclusion. And I think that in the review of the Constitution, we should put a specified number, that we can't go beyond this number. Nothing that if we even had to do with the 200 or 140, this country could live with that. Because I don't agree. I share your sentiments that we are making, and indeed, go and check the Hansa. The last time I raised this matter, that people should not think that they are ingenious in what they were doing when everybody knew that what they were doing was really to just have a redrawing the Constitution, the boundaries of the Constitution to favor a political party.
Thank you.
It is wrong.
Thank you.
In fact, put a stop to that.
In fact, mathematically, by this number, half of Parliament is not 138. It's 138 and half, 37 and half.
But you don't have half a personality. That is why it is 138. In any case, if it is 137 and a half,
I get
the
that.
number in the house 137 and a half.
I'm saying mathematically, it's not 138.
I know.
All right. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairman Sabonsu. We wish you well, but definitely this is very difficult for you, isn't it? That the majority is walking out. We are used to the minority walking out, not the majority walking out. And then the minority bringing the majority to a point where you are literally begging and can't have your way, and the minority simply have their say. Ms. Dr. Atuforsen, how are you going to cooperate going forward to ensure that, it's the economy, this country is important, because what you are doing is shutting the economy down, and that's going to be disastrous.
To start with, let me say that the majority leader in his submission made the point that during the days when Honorable Seth Pepper was a Minister of Finance, something similar happened. But let me say that it is nothing similar. Nothing of the sort happened. In fact, at that point, the issue he was making reference to relate to fiscal table that has been messed up and the need for us to correct the fiscal table. It has nothing to do with policy and disagreement with policy to the extent that the minority had taken a position that they would disagree. So the issues we are talking about are never the same. And again, for the record, I did not serve as a deputy minister under President Mills. I served as a deputy minister under President Mahama. So I wasn't.
Yeah, can I have your closing comments on the question I asked?
Let me go to the issues. What is most critical for me is how we move forward as a country. It is important for us to understand that if the majority in government today, the majority members, the MPP members of parliament, insist that the vote that we took is a minority, they know what to do. They can come with a substantive motion or probably come with a rescission motion. If they do that, the rules will apply. But the question is, will they be able to succeed? It's a question we all have to ask ourselves. But you see, let me say that is going to be a very expensive mistake on the part of the NPP if they decide to go through that route. Because the overall impact is going to hit them as a government and obviously the economy. And they will be the ones to carry the burden. What they need to do is for us to, by now, in fact, the engagement should even start today, Saturday, so that by Wednesday, we will be able to have a compromise position.
There's no sign that there's going to be engagement?
But as I sit here, I'm not aware that any engagement is going on.
Okay.
I'm not aware. And I'm speaking as a ranking member of the Finance Committee of Parliament. So you see, it is important for them to do that. They can decide to go to Supreme Court, but will that help the cause? How long is it going to take before we have a budget? Can they decide to go through Parliament in a form of coming with a motion of rescission, or probably challenge the speakers?
As far as you are concerned, they can't come back and have the budget back on the table. That's what you're saying.
The finance minister moved a motion for adoption of the budget on the 17th of November, 2021. The budget was subsequently subjected to debate. The Honorable Kweku Kwatin seconded the motion. I started the debate from the minority side. The debate has run on to continuously till yesterday, 21st, the debate was concluded. The Speaker put the question for the motion of the 2022 budget as to whether it should be accepted or be rejected. We all know what happened. What happened was that the motion was rejected. And so as we speak, there's no budget before Parliament. The majority can come out with legal argument, say whatever they have to say, but the truth is that as we speak, there's no budget before us. There's no budget. What they need to do, as we speak now, who heads must prevail.
Okay.
Who heads must prevail. They have to really understand that there's a need for them to engage. And I'm urging them as a government that, look, they should live above this politics. They should understand that this is a hung parliament. They should understand that the only way to carry this country forward is to engage. Let's sit on the table and engage. Accept the views of the minority and tell us what you can do in the form of concession to move the country
Thank you
forward.
very much, Kesola Toforsing. Dr. Kesola Toforsing is ranking on finance. He's simply saying what happened was valid. He does seem to suggest that it's sort of a leadership failure on the part of the majority, and they must do better. Okay, thank you very much. I'm having some of the MPs sending me messages on some of the issues that transpired, including some of the members of the leadership. But we have a special edition to deal with for you today, talking about the energy sector, which is suffering, hemorrhaging, but we don't seem to be aware. And it does appear that by 2023, we are heading to a whopping 12.5 and some quote 12.6, 12.7 billion dollars of debt. And that debt can bring this economy on its knees. When we return, I'll read some of your messages on the Parliament issue, and then I will engage my guest for that particular issue. This is the Parliament that at times they needed only a quorum of 92, and they couldn't raise that number. Here we are today. We'll be right back.
What's up, guys? My name is Sammy Forson, host of the Weekend City Show and Ignition right here on Joy 99.7 FM. Well, anytime you happen to be busy and you miss out on your favorite shows right here on Joy FM, here's what you can do. Log on to myjoyonline.com/podcast. Just go on there and you'll find all your shows on demand 24/7. There you can catch up. Remember, Joy FM remains your radio for discerning listeners.
You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. And just a few of the messages I want to share with you. Yakubu Ibn Chambers says that it's a truism that every democracy requires an efficient and an uncompromising minority machinery to put the government on its toes. But to leverage on this opportunity to make matters cumbersome for government machinery is just not fair to the citizenry. There are just proposals in the budget that must be approved with the blink of an eye, i.e. the scrapping of the road toll levies. We have a collective duty to hold fast to the wheel of development, majority and minority. That's from Yakubu Ibn Chambers. Okay, I'm sorry, I have to stop it here because already we have spent too much time, and that affects our special edition because too many times we pay attention to the things that happen immediately and forget about the real things that need dealing with and providing solutions up front. The energy sector. Clearly, I've been reading various reports and it's hemorrhaging. That's the least I can put it. And if we are not careful, we'll get to a point where the debt in that sector will cripple this economy. So, looking forward, how do we avoid such a situation? Our sincere apologies to our guests who were billed to start and end the show from 9 to 12. So my guests in the studio are Harriet Emisarta, co-founder and executive partner, Arthur Energy Advisors. Thank you so very much for making the time to join us.
You're welcome.
Great. Also here in the studio is Dr. Nida Kwasante. He's energy consultant and former director, technical regulation at Energy Commission. Thank you so much, Doc. Joining us via Zoom are Kwejo Poku, executive director, Institute for Energy Policies and Research, and Dr. Rivison Opong, energy economist and founder, chief editor, Global Energy Insights. Gentlemen, thank you for making the time. Okay, so please unmute your mics for now and be mindful of that once you are called upon to make your contribution, unmute. Can we hear you?
Yes, we can hear you, if you can hear me.
Great. Okay, so for starters, and I'll start with Doc here. For starters, when we put up our flyer and brought to the attention of the country that the energy sector is estimated to pile up a debt of as much as, $12.5 billion US. Some people were taken aback, very surprised. Some were really sad, and they sent us messages. Some believe that this is such that we can't get out of. How did we get there? How did we get here where we are likely to get there?
Well, we got here, and thank you very much, and thank you for having us. We got here simply by failing to take decisions that needed to be taken. And it's not one decision, but it's several. The most important one, of course, was separating the cost of electricity from the price that we pay. And that took the pressure off us improving the performance of the utilities. So inefficiencies were tolerated to an extent that they shouldn't have been. And also
we increased costs in areas where it was avoidable. We've heard a lot about excess capacity, that being the most common one. But there's also excess gas supply, which was projected. So all of these things work together to send us downhill into this position where we're staring at disaster. Without sort of breaking the steam, I should say that some actions have been taken. So 12.5 billion is no longer where we are heading. It's still bad, but it's not as bad as 12.5 billion. We are probably heading towards about 7.5 billion now. And we'll tell you more about some of the things which have been done so far, which have managed to bring that target or that looming disaster or mitigate it to some extent. But the fact is 7.5 billion is also terrible.
So as we understand, Madam Emisata, as we understand, by at the end of 2018, we are talking about a debt that was around 2.7 billion or so. So what makes us bring that estimate of 12.5 by 2023?
Samson, as you heard Doctor say, we continue to take the decisions that accrue the debt to the sector. I mean, by 2018, you are 2.7 billion. Some of the contracts, the take-or-pay contracts that were signed for power production were not yet due. So over the years, you've had some of those become due. In the meantime, we've also entered into some agreements to bring in gas and to increase the excess gas that we have. So in other words, what I'm saying is that in 2018, not only were we on track to have excessive excess in power generation capacity, we already had excess gas. And then we went ahead to put in place arrangements to procure more gas. So now you have the debts that are accruing from the excess capacity we procured, and now you also have debts that are accruing from the excess gas we've procured, and those that we have in the pipeline will also mature and we have to add them to the debt. So I think that it's very clear, and I think Doc has already said this, that the way in which we're making decisions are not helping us. And I think one of the things that we need to note is that in the energy sector, the size of the projects are such that you only need a few to really get yourself into trouble. And also, when we make these decisions, the energy sector projects are long-term projects. You're talking minimum 20 years, 25 years terms. And therefore, when you make a decision that does not augur well, you have to stay with it for a very long time. So that's why you're seeing some of the decisions, one, the magnitude very quickly increase. But also, if we don't take the necessary steps today, these are situations that will stay with us for a very long time and maybe get worse.
Dr. Opong, we are told that Ghana is one of the countries where, we pay a lot, as in the rate, the tariffs are high. So why are we talking about not being able to finance the sector properly?
Thank you. Thank you to committee for bringing me here. Yes, we do understand that Ghana has one of the highest tariff, even in sub-Saharan Africa. Lower than others, like Liberia and Co. Our even neighbor, Cote d'Ivoire. But financing by ourselves, I believe, is totally different from getting a higher tariff. And I believe Dr. Santi touched on all of the keys. The reason why we have high tariffs is because of the added capacity that we are paying for but not tapping into, right? And also the tariff that we set do not come to the government unless the government take the decision to invest by itself to set up plants, those IPPs, to generate power, and then we can testify. We can see that. We all believe that the discovery of gas was the solution, and I think we have had the discussion on different platforms. But what do we see? The cost of gas, what we call the weighted average cost of gas, as a fuel for producing power or electricity, is that high that we cannot reduce the tariff for electricity. And even going forward, to be very honest with you, and we are going to probably see a much more higher WACOG if care is not taken. So a higher tariff is supposed to come. But just like I said in the beginning, certain higher tariff and in investing in a project are two different things altogether.
Kojopoku, we are told that the IMF tells us that this year, they tell us that the government of Ghana paid over 2% of GDP. That's a lot. 2% of GDP, about $1.37 billion in 2020 to support the sector. And it goes on to project that the sector shortfall under business as usual assumptions will remain over 1 billion per year until at least 2024.
Yeah.
This not sustainable.
Yes, Samson, good morning to you and my guests and your viewers. I have always said that it's unfortunate that this government or past government don't take the energy sector very serious. The energy sector is the single most important sector in Ghana today. You just mentioned the analysis in terms of what the contribution is to GDP. You've mentioned what the debt can grow into if care is not taken. And if we get to that 12 billion, even the 7 billion that Prof talks about, is still substantial. That is more than what we need to finance the shortfall of this year's budget. Okay? Now, I think there's something I need to clarify. We keep contributing the energy sector debt to overcapacity. Overcapacity is something that we are actually coming out of it. In 2017, 2018, you can talk about overcapacity and get away with it. As we sit now, going into 2022, we no longer have the luxury to talk about overcapacity. As we speak, we were at 2,800 megawatts in 2019. We are about 3,200 today. Now, the total capacity, installed capacity, about 4,000 megawatts and change. Now, in that space, you need what is called a spinning reserve, which is about 20% of your installed capacity. So if you do 20% of your 4,000 that you have, is 800 megawatts. So in 2022, we are really borderline of our capacity and the rest is spinning reserves. Now, what we need to do as a nation is to figure out how do we pay for this spinning reserve. As we speak, PLC does not factor that into our prices. Now, in the energy sector recovery program, which talks about the 2023 12 billion, one of the things that the government admitted was that we need to increase electricity tariffs plus other measures to be able to bring the sector to balance. This year was a year that we're supposed to do a major electricity recovery pricing. Okay, there's a major review in our pricing this year. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened. So it means that we are still behind on the policies that we need to make. We keep blaming past actions of people, talk about excess capacity and all those things. Yes, it was the cost for the debt in the past, okay? But when you started your narration, you said we are hemorrhaging. And in hemorrhaging, you need to stop the bleeding. And we've not done that, okay? One of the biggest relief that we brought into the sector was ESLA. And going forward, I'm sure when I have a next bite at this discussion, I will explain how the ESLA has come in to compound the issue instead of relieve the sector.
Right, Doc. So he says that we have not been able to stop the bleeding. You were positive somewhat when you said we have done quite a bit, but you mentioned what caused these issues: excess power generation capacity, excess gas supply, non-payment of bills, technical losses, and the rest of them. We understand that the way forward is to step up our game in implementing the energy sector recovery program. What is that, and how exactly is it a sort of a solution?
Okay, thank you very much. I think the energy sector recovery program is not one thing, it's many things. Essentially, it's a long list of actions which are designed to fix this problem. Now, before even it was approved in 2019, there was a recognition that we had a problem. We've talked about energy sector debts for ages, but one government will pay the debt of the previous one and then proceed to build its own debt for the next government to come and pay down. And as with debts, it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So a team was put together to analyze the causes and to diagnose some solutions or interventions to bring it down. And so there was this comprehensive program put together and approved by Cabinet in May 2019. Now, 2 years down the line, a number of these initiatives have been implemented. But first of all, let me just itemize 6 key issues. We've talked about them. One is the excess generation capacity. By definition, with time, that excess will go. So even if you do nothing, with time, as our demand grows, that excess will go away. And I think Kojo has made some reference to that. Nonetheless, it is expensive because you are paying for something that you are not using. And under take or pay contracts, the assumption is that you ask somebody to build your power plant to supply you power. He is not responsible for finding out if you need the power or not. If you didn't need it, you shouldn't have gone to him. Once he has built his power plant, he has borrowed money, he has invested, he needs to get paid. And that is why they are take or pay. So take or pay is not the problem. The problem is building a plant you don't need or contracting somebody to build a plant you don't need. If you need the power, take or pay is not a problem. As you use it, you pay. Same thing with excess gas. If you go and contract somebody to supply you with gas, but you don't need the gas, he also goes to contract somebody else to supply him with that gas. That person wants to be paid. If you don't pay him, he can't pay them. So he'll insist that whether you take my gas or not, pay for it. That's the way these markets work. Then we have our utilities being inefficient. We know they lose a lot of the power that they purchase. So we contract these plants to give us power, and we lose 40% of it before we can sell it. Who's going to pay for that? Then we also have inefficient procurement. We hear stories about meters being procured and ending up in a warehouse getting burnt, and all sorts of other contracts. And then we also have the staffing sometimes gets bloated, but possibly that is not as high an issue. Then we have poor debt collection. You sell the power, but you don't collect your money. You issue a bill, the people don't pay, and life goes on. So whether it's government, and the utilities make a big deal about how much government owes them, but you probably find that the private sector owes them even more. When I say private sector, you and me, as well as business. Then I talked about power plants. Now you can procure a power plant and pay a good price or pay an excessive price. We have tended to pay more than average for the power that we procure. And the primary cause of this has been that we go and sit in a room, you and me, and decide, Charlie, your power, how much will you sell it? And because especially we have done this when we were hot, we were doomso, you know how desperate I am. In that situation, you're not going to bargain. Because I want it now. So you up your price and I'll agree. We've negotiated from a position of disadvantage, and we've done so one-on-one in dark corners, and everything is secret. So lastly, the tariff issue. once we decouple cost and tariff, you can do a lot of nonsense and the people or the population doesn't feel it immediately. So they don't complain about the nonsense that we are doing. So currently, the excess capacity charge, we're not paying for it. It's not captured in our tariff. PRC has done a tariff which does not include us paying for any of the excess capacity. That cost is transferred directly to Ministry of Finance. Where they find the money from, in our minds, is their problem. We forget that they'll turn around and bring things like e-levy to collect that money from us. And I keep saying, even if we don't pay it on our bills, we know we'll pay it one way or the other. Our president, our ministers are not going to take money out of their pockets to pay what we don't pay. So whether our bills stay low or they go up high, we are paying for it. It's just that you don't see where government comes and takes money out of your pocket to pay for the electricity you should have paid on your bill. So that is the sum total. Now, looking at these problems, you can see that the solutions are in themselves contained in the description of the problem.
There's one thing that you mentioned that I'm struggling to appreciate when you said the private sector, not rather the public sector, is more indebted or is more liable to causing the debt?
We are equally liable. It's just that, in a sense, when you look at it...
When you mentioned and you said me, for example, you, and I can't understand that. If I don't buy my power and pay for it, I sleep in darkness. If I don't pay for my bills, my office will be non-functional unless I use the generating set.
Or unless you are, should I say, not as ethical and are willing to listen to somebody who tell you that he can help you. And he'll manage to bypass your meter so that now your air conditioners are not on are not going through the meter. So your air conditioners now can reduce the temperature to 16 degrees because it will have no impact on your bill. And we know that this goes on.
That's true.
We know industries sometimes have a whole furnace which is not on the meter.
In fact, somebody made that suggestion to me once. The only thing I didn't do was get him arrested.
But this is going on all over the country. And to the point that some people even feel it's a right to consume electricity and not pay for it. Recently in Tamale, we heard of an altercation between NEDCO staff and the public in that area.
That's right.
And it was all over payment of fees. NEDCO had the effrontery to want to install split meters, which would mean that bypassing the meter will become extremely difficult. And that caused a riot because they were trying to insist that people should pay for the electricity they were consuming. And that seems...
What's the percentage of that to the debt that we are dealing with?
So it's hard to quantify, but we say, for instance, in NEDCO, and maybe Harriet may have some updated figures, there are somewhere around 40% losses. Some districts, I think, as high as 60%. The point is that, yes, there's collusion from the...
If you are superintending over such loss, you don't deserve to be in that office heading the institution.
Well, so that's another side of the solution, as you can say. When we appoint a leader to handle it, that should be one of the metrics for him keeping his job. But you and I know that the leaders of all these entities have different, should I say, performance metrics, which are not focused on losses, for instance, which are key. One of the things we implemented was a cash waterfall for ECG to see how much money they are collecting and to distribute that to all the people.
I can see you are getting into the solutions. I want you to hold on there. I want to pick the views of your friends on these, losses and causes of these problems, particularly in a way that all of us can begin to appreciate what role that we may be playing as individuals in the losses that is bringing us the accumulated debt that is unsustainable and may get to a point where it will, as it were, collapse the sector or affect the economy. So, Madam Misarata, I'm looking at it this way. So, we are talking about the energy sector recovery program, and as we understand, this is the entity that was reconstituted in 2021 with the vice president as the head of it. And the understanding is that the projected accumulated sector arrears is US 12.6 billion. The impact of the implementation has led to a reduction of 5.1 billion. So that, as he suggested earlier, net arrears we can talk about will be 7.5 billion. But how do we ensure that we don't talk about the $1 billion a year? Because that's clearly not something that we should continue in.
Samson, at the time this document was prepared, it was projected that by 2023, the annual sector debt will be increasing at a rate of about $2.7 billion. Now, I agree with Kojo when he talks about the capacity. We are almost matching the demand to excess capacity.
Okay.
But no sector, no energy sector procures power it needs 4 years, 5 years ahead of time and accrues the debt so it can use the capacity.
That's where we are.
That's what we've done with some of the capacity we procured. Because we procured it at a time we didn't need it, and hopefully in 22, 23, we will need that capacity. In the meantime, we have signed contracts for which we were paying 3 years, 4 years ahead of time. So given the magnitude...
I can't wrap my mind around that.
Yeah, yeah. And Samson, I just want to, if you take, let me just take the number.
Unless you are running a public entity.
Yeah, but
and,
even
and it's crazy.
But Samson,
you won't contemplate that in a private, arrangement.
No, but Samson, even if you're running a public entity, Doc was talking about the fact that we're not factoring it into the tariff yet. But what it means is that the cost of doing business in the energy sector in the country goes up. Because the other person who's standing outside wanting to come in is going to make sure that extra provisions and securities are provided before they invest in the sector. That's a cost to the sector as well as the country.
Okay.
So we're not just talking about the cash or the debt amount, but the repercussions on all of us and the sector as well to go forward. Especially in the sector where we continue to complain that the tariffs do not meet the cost of delivering the service. And yet, our decisions make it such that the cost of providing the service in our country becomes so high that the consumer is unable to pay. Because remember, the consumer also has a ceiling to how much they can spend on energy. Because there are other things they need to procure on. Yeah. And if you don't make sure the decisions are efficient so that your citizens will have some extra buying capacity, then the economy doesn't grow. Because
and
they are
like
not
we
able
say
to
about
spend.
fuel, this affects everything.
That's right. Then they are not able to spend. So I think that given that if we were still looking at the 2.7 billion in 2023, given that maybe about 2 billion of it would have resulted from excess capacity, power capacity, and gas capacity, we still need to look at those things very, very critically. And I agree with Doug that there's excessive losses through theft and technical losses. But if you compare how much we lose, and I'm not saying we should continue to steal electricity, but if you compare how much we lose from through theft to how much one decision to procure capacity we do not need costs us as a country. If we were to rectify and take the right decisions, it will then take away, if you like, the 2 billion. We'll be left with the 7 billion. We tackle some theft. We look at a few other issues, and it should put us in a good place, a better place to move forward.
Let me have Kojo Poku and Dr. Riverson-Opong share your views on your perspective or your image that you know about these, causative problems. Yes, starting with you, Kojo Poku, what's the range of these issues that brings us the debt? Because I want us to get everybody's view before we launch into the solution. And I need to understand my role. What role am I playing in this process?
Okay, so let me put a bit of information out there. Prof mentioned that NEDCO was doing something like 40% in the losses. For ECG, in last year's report, it was 26.63. So it's 10% technical losses and 16.63 for commercial losses. So the technical losses is basically dissipation of energy due to old machinery and just loss on the cables. Then the 16.63 is the non-collection or the illegal connection, which is something that it can be rectified if everybody is to do their work. Now, in terms of how the sector gets more debt year on year, is to do with a couple of things. One, the FX translation. Most of these debts are in dollars. So year on year, it's not that the debt is accumulated, but because the cedi to the dollar depreciates, the debt itself gets bigger when you now translating it from the dollar equivalent to the cedi equivalent. Then you have interest on these debts, okay? So the FX translation is a very big factor on the indebtedness. Then the interest on the debt. Yes, there are a lot of SOEs that are very inefficient, don't pay bills. There's this rhyme that goes on, Gridco, ECG owes Gridco, VRA owes this person, Ghana Gas, although everybody owes somebody in the sector. So it's more or less like an intersectorial debt that goes like a merry-go-round. That is also a big factor. And that stems from the MDA, the ministry, department, and agencies not paying their indebtedness. So one of the biggest consumer of electricity is government, okay? Now, you realize that when under PDS was to happen, government went to parliament and ring-fenced certain sectors or certain ministries that were not to be part of prepaid meters. And they called those areas the security installations. And that included the education, health, and finance interior. So in interior, it includes all the barracks, the police, military, and the education. It includes the schools, health, it includes all the hospitals. Now, all these institutions don't pay their electricity bill, okay? So government becomes the biggest indebtor. So if me and you pay our debt, or we have prepaid meters, government, who is the biggest indebtor to the sector, does not allow prepaid meters to some of these areas. So the debt keeps occurring. Then the second leg of that was that we now brought in ESLA. What did ESLA do? We took in the ESLA money, which is the levy that was imposed. Then we went to the bond market and took a bond. Now, we took a bond not for the entire debt in the sector. We took a bond for a partial debt. Now, whilst we are trying to find money to now pay the interest on the coupons, the debt still reoccurring. So you now brought in a solution that doesn't solve the problem. So, look, it's a problem where government needs to sit up because he's the number one problem or number one causer of the problem. So if government wants to resolve this problem, like we have heard from His Excellency John Mahama from when he was president to today, we should put prepaid meters on all ministry, departments, and agencies, barracks, schools, hospitals, because these are money-making institutions. Why can't they pay their bills? So that is where the problem is.
Yeah. All right. Dr. Rev Senopong, if you have a few insights to share on, these problems that lead to the losses, let's hear them. And then we will take a quick break, return to ask questions about how to address the excess capacity matters. What will be, how effectively can we ensure implementation of what Doc had referred to, the catch waterfall mechanism, among others? Yes.
Thank you so much once again. So I think Kojo kind of stole some words from me, and that's had to do with once talk about energy sector debt, to the lay person, he's saying that the energy ministry has made certain laws. That's right. But that's exactly what Kojo said. It's in the energy value chain, so where you see ECG's inability to pay VRA, for EVRA's inability to pay for the gas consumed to Ghana Gas and GMPC brings all those debts. So GMPC can also not pay for OCTP gas. Okay, so we realize that it just runs to the value chain from the time that we have seen that we saw the 12.5 starting from I would say 2.748 as of 2018, which we call the legacy debt, right? So adding on, even till date, we still have some kind of minute legacy debts that we do acquire, even though we still have the CWM, as Dr. Asante said, implemented. Why do we have that? Because again, like Dr. Asante said, the inability for electricity to ECG to collect all revenue, so we have that losses from there. And at the moment, even with the CWM, you realize that the CWM cannot make full payment to the entire value chain, month on month. The reason, first of all, is the electricity debt that is, you've all discussed. I'm not going to touch on that. And then also the revenue collection. Also, one big point is also the weighted average cost of gas that is not compatible. So month on month, once you have discrepancies in the volumes of gas that is being used, you have the weighted average cost of gas a bit higher than what is set by PURC. Once that goes into the CWM model, you're going to have your revenue much lesser than what expected. We have for now only ECG collection on the CWM. What about NETCO? And I believe probably once you go on, Dr. Santo will touch on that. We do expect that moving forward, we do have the NETCO's also revenue coming onto the stream to reduce certain costs, because you also know that the NETCO takes care of the distribution from the BA to the north. And we also have a company taking care of the free zone area. If all these collections could come, I believe that the sector debt from 2019 to 2023 could be, realized. You realize that Dr. Santi is saying that it's reducing from 12.2 to 5 by 5-point-something million dollars. And one of the key things that he mentioned was got the implementation of that. At least there is some money to share in the sector. And also with the MOF sector stabilization payment to reduce the accumulated legacy debt, I think about 6.6 billion was paid in 2020, an approximation of 1.2 billion, including the 2019 MDA payment. So Minister of Finance is doing his best to pay this MDA payment, but just like Kokojo said, if we allow them to pay for the energy loss, so the energy used by themselves, I believe the revenue collection by ECG will also go high. Another thing that we have also not mentioned is also the loss of ECG's high-paid customers, i.e. the mining companies. So there's competition now. You see Gensa coming into the play, competing with ECG over the mining companies. And I've sat in meetings where ECG complained bitterly that has halved, that's reduced their revenue, I don't say by half, but to a marginable range. So if we don't take care and these private IPPs take over ECG's customers, we should expect even the cash waterfall mechanism not functioning.
Interesting. I want to take a break, but I saw you shaking your head. That must mean that you want to say something. Can you make that quick about the last point he made that you don't seem to agree?
Well, I'm just saying that if you listen to the discussion we're having, I think we're complicating, some of the terms and the funds and the different funds we set up, make it sound as if the energy sector, unlike other businesses, is so special and different and very complicated. Like every business, it's cost and selling price. And when you live in a competitive market, you have to be competitive.
That's right.
If ECG is competitive and it's helped its customers for a long time, and the relationships are good, you shouldn't be afraid of the competitor, because that's what all businesses do.
Right.
But because ECG is public, if it's not competitive, eventually they will lose their customers. So that is not the reason why the cash waterfall mechanism will not work. And we have to also remember, just because we name a special fund by a special name doesn't make it become a solution.
Okay.
The cash waterfall only receives what we collect. So if we are shortfall in collection, the cash waterfall will also have a shortfall in revenue collection. And everybody just gets a little of what is collected. Okay. So the emphasis has to be in, if we're not collecting enough, we have to collect them.
Okay.
And the institutions that collect them must have the means, they must have the freedom, they must have the know-how to go and collect the money so that the money is there to pay for the cost of delivering the service. So I think that I would like to see how we move forward with this. But electricity is electricity delivery service. It's a business like everything else.
Great.
And whether we are operating it in the public or the private, we have to make sure that the business principles work. Okay. Otherwise, any name you give it, it still doesn't work.
We take a quick break. When we return, we are going to be big on the solutions. And like I keep saying, I like to hear what my role as an individual will be in this, so that whilst I'm holding someone responsible and accountable, I also must do my part. And my guest, Harriet Mr. Arthur, is co-founder and executive partner, Arthur Energy Advisors. Kwejo Poku, executive director, Institute for Energy Policies and Research. Dr. Riverson Opong is energy economist and founder, as well as chief editor, Global Energy Insights. And Dr. Ni Dakwa-Sante is energy consultant and former director, technical regulation at Energy Commission. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, as always, we put Ghana first. And my guest, Harriet Mr. Arthur, is co-founder and executive partner, Arthur Energy Advisors. Kwejo Poku is executive director, Institute for Energy Policies and Research. Dr. Riverson Opong is energy economist and founder, chief editor, Global Energy Insight. Dr. Ni Dakwa-Sante is energy consultant and former director, technical regulation at the Energy Commission. This program, as always, is paid for by Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner, MTN everywhere you go, Ashasi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. We lead, home is where one starts. Having mosquitoes, coil and spray, pleasant on humans, tough nightmare on insects, and Napa Foods. It's tasty. DBS Industries. We truly are your root experts. Robert & Sons Limited, Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care services provider. Rehoboth Properties, quality housing for all. Fabrimental, your partner in steel. Trazaku Fast Floors, stronger, faster, and affordable. And Cap Farm Legends Nights. Now, let's get to see how it looks like. We will be able to get out of this difficulty. How do we do that? And I return to you because you have started already to throw out the solutions. What I don't understand is this thing about a problem with collection. Well, why is that a problem? And why should that be a problem?
Clearly, you haven't done business in Ghana. Collecting money is difficult. Whether you are selling cloth or you are selling business services, you will get people to ask you to do it for you. But when it comes to paying for the goods you've supplied or for the service you provided, I'm sure Harriet has had problems with that in her business. Ghanaians don't like paying. Nobody likes paying money. It's just the problem that when it comes to a publicly owned service, we feel a right not to pay because, after all, it's for all of us. And we are all Ghanaians, as we often say. So there's an extra difficulty for ECG and for NEDCO to collect their money from the general public and even from government institutions.
I thought other things are in a different basket compared to, energy, where, I'm the one who is selling literally holds so much power. So
only when he has the power to turn off the tap.
Exactly.
But you see, the utilities will tell you you cut certain entities or institutions and you get calls. You get calls from the power that be or from your own boss, hey, connect these people again. They haven't paid a penny, but reconnect them. And the utilities constantly make that complaint. And very often there's the implication that the jobs of those people are on the line. So just connect them and let's go on. So that's the reality. There's no doubt that that excuse is used and abused for the utilities to also have their own private customers who they provide a service that they do not own for their own personal gain. But if the powers that be did not condone some of this, the utilities would have, or their employees would have no excuse to do that. So on that issue of collections, you often hear about prepayment meters. It's a technology solution to cover our cultural, maybe, dispensation not to pay. I'll tell you for a fact that a lot of countries do not believe in prepayment meters. And the reason is simply that when you install a prepayment meter, it means your meter readers stop going to that facility. When they stop going to that facility, if I've bypassed the meter, even in plain sight, there's nobody there coming to see. If a meter reader comes there and maybe he finishes his rounds maybe around 5 p.m. and he knows that he has disconnected this house and he sees the lights on, it tells him that basically they have bypassed the meter or something. But if he's never there, you don't see it. So developing countries like us, some of them choose not to have prepayment meters, but they enforce collection and disconnection. I mean, countries are different. We may go the prepayment route, but it's an expensive solution.
Very.
Prepayment meters are expensive. So we must accept that our cost will therefore be higher than a country which has a philosophy of paying its bills. And we can't sit here and complain, hey, our power is too expensive. Now, who caused that? If we pay our bills, we can get slightly cheaper power. The utilities won't have as high interest costs whilst they await payment. They won't have to import expensive prepayment meters. Their power suppliers will not request long periods of letters of credit for power supply, which have a cost on them. When we have a poor payment culture, and that is you and I, it makes life more expensive for us. We know that also with bank interest rates, but that's another thing altogether. We are part of the problem. So we must own the solution. Basically accepting that until we change our attitudes, we will pay slightly more. The other thing is that nobody likes unpleasantness. Collecting money takes a certain character. I mean, you have to have a tough face to go and stand in front of people when they're, hey, my child was ill and my husband lost his job. We can make excuses. And you have to be the tough nut who, I don't care, you pay me my bill. So NETCO people, ECG people, they're also human beings. They don't like the unpleasantness of going to disconnect people and argue with people over bills. So if there's something else they can do rather than go and do disconnection or going to tell people you haven't paid your bill, they'll do that. And if we let them get away with it, they will not enforce collection and payment of bills. It's an unpleasant...
I'm looking at what should be low-hanging fruit, so to speak. And within this period and the energy sector, the awards thing that was held recently, I've discovered that within the sector, the late Professor Beku Bruhammond is being celebrated for his impacts and particularly in this area. So when I look at the energy sector recovery program and I see that the Vice President is first and top on it, and I look at the efforts that have been made to seek to reduce the debt, then I ask myself, he's the man who is leading the digitization, the digitalization agenda to create a smart economy. I'm sure we're all excited about that. If for nothing at all, we can give credit for that. Now, why are we not using the simple digital methods to avoid this? We can't collect, and some people are talking about losses, you know, up to 40 to 60%.
So we are, but like I said, that solution has a cost attached to it. And I should just give credit to the senior minister who was the original chairman of the ESR,
yes,
the Energy Sector Task Force, and has been replaced by the vice president, who is now chairing the task force. So all of the initiatives have been considered. Like I said, in Ghana, the digital solution of prepayment meters is our, I should say, weapon of choice, of first choice. So ECG, NEDCO are rolling out prepayment meters for the public sector, for the ministries, departments, and agencies, to take away the choice of payment. If you don't pay, you are disconnected by the system itself.
Should be as simple as that.
It is as simple as that, except that, like I said, the meters cost money. So we have to find money again to buy these meters, to have them installed at all these places. And yes, that is being done. I have some challenges with the speed and the targeting of it, but it's being done. The other thing to say is that, in fact, you mentioned Abekubu Hammond. He was the chairman of the Energy Commission when I joined the Energy Commission. And one of the things you have from people like him is the enthusiasm and the determination. In fact, when I was appointed, he called me. I hadn't really ever spoken to him, but he called me up, got my phone number, as if we're old friends. And he was saying, you know, we are looking forward for you to come and make some impact in the energy sector. So he gave sort of that charge or that impetus that sort of carried me through. And I think with the energy sector recovery program, it is an initiative with potential in the sense that the government itself has recognized the problem, has diagnosed the issues and come up with solutions. The challenge is that if it was easy to do, it would have been done long ago. So we all recognize that some of these decisions are difficult to implement and painful in their impact. So with the vice president there, he's able to talk at a high level with the energy minister and the finance minister because they have impact on our budget, on our finances. And that is why we have made the impact so far, about 5 billion being taken off the top.
Okay.
But those were sort of the easy ones. The tough ones are the ones that will affect you and me, including tariff, including getting ECG and NEDCO to improve their collection rate, their efficiency, including making sure that we don't enter into expensive contracts or excessive procurement. And if you understand how these things happen, they don't happen generally by accident. They are normally people who would promote these things for one reason or another. So it's not as easy as just turning off that. And very often, you know, it's done with a positive intention. You know, we project a growth of the economy such that we will need this power. There was a 5,000 megawatt target that we had as a country. That 5,000 megawatt, as Harriet describes, was procured before we were ready to use it. So we can be ambitious in our projections, but when it comes to purchasing power, we have to be realistic. And that tension is sometimes problematic with a government that is very ambitious to develop the country.
Okay. Now, let's see. And I suppose we can start writing a book. Right, don't mind me. So you've written profusely, and I want us to benefit from what you have in those notes as regards the solutions. Is it the excess power generation capacity issue you want us to deal with? Which are the issues you want to take, and what are the solutions?
Samson, I think that underlining all the things we're talking about is the chronic inefficient decision making. And I think it's gotten us the excess power capacity, it's gotten us the excess gas capacity, it continues to plague us in other areas. I think that if in our sector we're waiting for people to change before they pay for services delivered to them, we're going to wait a long time. How do the MTNs and the Vodafones get their services paid for? And so energy sector, I keep saying that we have to begin to think about it as a business. Whether the owners, the major owners are government or not, it is a business and things have
because we do not have an option. We cannot get to where, we cannot continue on this trajectory.
No, we can't.
And we cannot get to where it is estimated we'll get to.
We can, but we will be committing suicide. We can.
That's right.
Okay, so, and I think Ni has touched on the fact that the Vice President leads the action on the energy sector recovery program shows that government may be serious this time. But the point is that I'm hoping that his time spent on something like this is short and not too long. Because as a country, we have things to do, and our Vice President need not be the money collector or finding money to feed. That's why you have heads of institutions, that's why you have a minister for energy, you have all kinds of, you have technocrats in there who can do their job. So he can look at the country 20 years from today. So I think that is a great idea, but if all we do is use our president, our vice president, or cabinet ministers to collect money for one sector, that's a problem. That it tells you that the business
But a particular sector whose debt has such an effect on the economy that it can cripple it, and the vice president is head of the economic management team, I suppose that's the reason. But my question is, he's the one, laying out all the, fast economy, strategies, digitization and digitalization. Why are these not tools that we can see evident in this area in a way that can help?
Simon, when you get yourself cash strapped, your options become very limited. And so some of the things you're saying, like Neil was saying, if really we want to go the prepayment route, the monies they're talking about for prepayment is only, if you compare it to our debt, it's only about 400 million to give everybody. We're done. But we're doing 10 million, 5 million, another 20 million, because we don't have the money. And yet, we're taking decisions that can cost us 1 billion at a time, annually. And so imagine that we reduce that liability resulting from our decision making. We can take 400 of that and implement the solution of prepaid meters once, and then we're done. So, and then it becomes the incremental meters that we put in here and there. So I think that's what you see. I think that when all is said and done, if we don't stop this chronic, inefficient decision making, if we give ourselves 5 years, we'll be back here talking the same thing. So I will say that one of the things, like Ni has already mentioned, but I just want to emphasize it. I think one of the things that we need to look at is look at the entire value chain and how things get done. And I think also for the decision making to be comprehensive. How do you buy something and not watch what price you're selling it, or the effect and what it is that you're doing? Because when we talk about things like the FX increases the interest and everything, every business, when they loan money, look at how much the interest rate is. They factor it into their projections for revenue.
That's right.
So they can feature it. So again, either the decision making is not complete, it's inefficient in its chronic nature. Consistently, the decisions we make land us in trouble. And so you step into 1 billion, then you redeem 200, then you step in 2 billion and you redeem 300. It doesn't make you make the progress. So my suggestion would be that now that we're looking at solving some of these problems, not just to look at the items we deal with now, but some of the decisions we're already in the throes of making today, as we are paying off what we've already incurred, so that we're not adding to it. Because as we're talking about excess generation, we are still procuring generation. So how do we put a stop? Let's put some timeline somewhere and say, okay, we've incurred enough, we've added and so forth. Can we put a line here so we're not procuring anymore, so that we can halt the decay and then we can come?
There are the issues of the delayed application of the automatic adjustment formula, delays in gas infrastructure completion to help. What can you say about that?
come back to the decision making. Why? So the idea to make sure that our fuel supplies are secure was what has led in bringing on board LNG infrastructure. And I think you can make a good case for bringing in LNG. But then we had envisaged that we should connect the West and the East so that gas from Ottawa can flow into Tema and Tema can go to Ottawa. That way you only needed one LNG procurement. But here we are, the actual infrastructure as we've envisaged it now is a little below 200 million. But we're procuring facilities that will cost us will land us in a debt of about 500 million at a time when we don't need the excess gas, right? To put one LNG infrastructure in Tema and another in Takoradi. And then the connecting pipe, projects that connects the two places has been delayed. When the amount to do that is much less than doing these other projects. So again, I'm just pointing you back to the decision-making process and how we tie these things together to make sure that, and plus, if we were to actually look at the option of actually constructing an online pipeline from Ottawa to onshore pipeline from Takoradi to Tema, then to Tema, then you could look at also industries along the line. You could immediately supply and maybe even create economic zones along the line as you're coming. Because we have the excess, industry needs to consume it. And so instead of putting it under the sea and then having to find ways to develop the demand for it, if we put it onshore, we immediately can then create some economic zones.
Right. I need to take a break, and then when I return, I'm bringing in Kojo and Riverson to get your thoughts on the tariff structure. Are we looking forward to a revision of the tariff structure and the cost allocation? We went into PDS. Does that suggest that that was the best approach, and it's likely the kind of approach that will bring us the needed, as it were, resolution and a future for the sector? So kindly hold on for me. Let's go for this very final break and return. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile, it's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And now, let me go quickly to my guest on Zoom and have you help us with the solutions quickly. Because look, we're talking industrialization. It takes energy. Without energy, we are lost in this. So start with you, Riverson.
Okay, thank you so much. And I'll be very... try to be brief here because I have a lot of points here.
Right.
I just want to start by saying that ESRP was not set to identify debt for Minister of Finance to pay. I want to emphasize this based on the remarks I had from the honorable lady sitting in the panel. ESRP was set to identify ways and means to seize the debt. Okay, and that is what for the past few years ESRP has done. And so I want to buttress on the point that CWM therefore has to be sustainable. How can CWM be sustainable if collection is not coming? I mean, and collection is not the only point. And I'm happy she mentioned business strategy. Therefore, then we would task ECG to come up with a strategy not to lose their customers. Because as we all speak now, CWM stands on the revenue collected from ECG, and it's point blank. That is number one solution that we can use to seize. So I mean, there's a debt. Ministry of Finance has paid. It still has an impact on the revenue of the nation, on the budget. Let's find ways and means to seize this. And I'm happy you mentioned tariff. I believe going forward. And we also thank God that Dr. Asante is part of the board of PRC, and like he said, we would have a cost-reflective tariff, for that matter, where the difference in debt, the difference in tariff will not cause a debt in the energy sector. That's one.
Okay.
I'm also happy decision making, firm decision making was mentioned by all the two panels, and I'm sure Kojo also mentioned the same. But just to buttress on that, due to firm decision to stop Takoradi LNG, out of this 5.1 billion that we are saving from the 12 point something million, 68 million was saved in the energy sector. GMPC reducing thermal LNG volume and commitment, we're able to save 1.6 billion. You get it? So it's buttressing on the point that decision making is very critical. Some must be firm so that we can save the sector.
Yeah, Dr. Rachel, thank you. Forgive me, but we just run out of time. Kojo Poku, what can you say? What can you say in some 30 seconds, 1 minute, in the contribution towards the bigger solutions? You are muted.
Sorry, the biggest problem is with Ministry of Finance that does misappropriation. Constantly, PIAC has come out to say that, look, my revenue coming in has not been put towards what it's to put towards to. Yes, decision making is very important. Looking at the structure, one of the basic things that we need to do is to transition ECG into PSP, which is private sector-led initiative where it can be run efficiently. In summation, I will say that if Ministry of Finance takes all the money given to them and put them to the right use, in some areas, Ghanaians will get a relief. Then we'll look at the areas where we need to make up for. But if you now put all the money into one basket and misappropriate it, then there will always be a problem. So that's the biggest challenge.
Thank you very much. Before we went to the break, you had your hand up. Some 30 seconds. Do I have 30 seconds? Yes.
So just quickly, I think we have expensive power. As part of the SRP, we are trying to negotiate down some of the power plants we already have. But the other key thing is that we should not bring any other power plants without a competitive procurement process, which in itself will ensure that the price is
great. Thank you all so very much. My guests have been Dr. Ni Darko Asante. He is energy consultant and former director technical regulation at Energy Commission. Dr. Riverson Opong, energy economics and founder, chief editor, Global Energy Insight. Kojo Poku, Executive Director, Institute for Energy Policies and Research, and Harriet Emisa Arthur is co-founder and executive partner, Arthur Energy Advisors. I'm Samson Ladia Yanini, and my outfit, as always, is by Habil Scooter. You can find them at Ajiringano Gates, East Legon, and call them 0200 84 1988. Have a good afternoon.